Welcome to my presentation on the impact of AI on the UK labour market. Before I get into my actual project, I want to give a brief history of the last sort of 300 years from an industrial sense, and at least a Western perspective on the last 300 years. So since the sort of 1750s, 60s, the world has seen sort of an industrial revolution every like 50 to 100 years. And we started off with sort of the first inventions of like engines, so like water, steam power, the use of energy really. And this gave us trains, it gave us to telegraph, it gave us a bunch of technologies. Then we sort of saw in the lead up to the First World War, we saw this like idea of a supply chain, the mechanization of stuff, creating factories. We got the car, the airplane, all sorts of things. And then finally, the two wars brought a lot of destruction, but also inspired this new era of technology, right? We found a way to go to the moon. We developed all sorts of medicine cures and all sorts of things, right? And this was another period of huge industrial revolution. And this gave us everything, computers, medicine, all kinds of things, yeah? And so this brings us to this fourth industrial revolution, right? It's what we call the AI and automation revolution, right? And so the key thing with all these previous revolutions is that every previous revolution has been built on some sort of past innovation, right? So you can imagine the Wright brothers, when building an airplane, they needed knowledge of an engine, they needed knowledge of combustion, those kind of things to build sort of propeller engine, right? And so we see that AI itself can improve the productivity of what we do now. But the thing with AI that could be unique is that it can break this pattern of like what is exponential growth, definitely exponential growth. It can break this and become even more sort of exponential, if that makes sense, by being a source of innovation itself. So it doesn't just improve stuff that we already do, right? And so you can see it's a rough diagram of just AI could potentially improve the world at a much faster rate, right? And so this brings us to like sort of why my sort of project is important, right? Why should we look at this next revolution? Well, with every one of these revolutions, there was an immense upheaval of society and labor, right? And so people were constantly worried about the end of humanity, right? And throughout history, these critics are those who've been silenced, right? I mean, people afraid of change and who said unemployment was going to result as due to industrial revolution have almost always been wrong, right? I mean, the welfare of billions of people has improved. And so the evidence is right there, right? But with each transition, there's a huge lag period, right? And that's what my sort of project aims to address. Is like there's a huge lag period where jobs are lost and people suffer from sort of structural change. And so I'm from the UK, right? And so this sort of evidence you can see in the UK, right? So on this left, you see this map of population density, which is sort of akin to GDP back in the 1800s, right? And you could see that the sort of North Wales, Northern England seems to have a density of population and sort of economy as well, right? But you see these same regions currently are some of the most deprived areas. So you see Newcastle, Northern Wales, like sort of coastal areas here have sort of suffered as a result of this deindustrialization or the third industrial revolution, right? And so my problem aims to sort of predict what will this look like with AI and what should we do about it. So in terms of personal fit, I'm just interested in economics and modeling. And of course, I'm a young person entering the labor market. So I'm sort of interested in how AI will form the jobs. Like, will ChatGPT take all my jobs before I even start, right? So my solution is essentially a quantitative economic model to try and predict what will happen with AI on the labor market. And so focusing on output, employment, all those kind of things, and looking for the next 30 years, which is where I see the most sort of this lag period that I defined is sort of most profound in these 30 years. Looking at current research, my idea to like model the impact of AI is not necessarily novel, right? I mean, people have done this before, but I think I bring some new perspectives, especially considering how AI itself is going to improve at an exponential rate. And many of the models I found in people's previous work didn't account for this. And this is what we call in economics some sort of endogeneity. So how I developed the model, essentially, I started with a sort of Cobb-Douglas function. This is just a common economic function to describe output, right? You can see it here and sort of the math behind it. And I modified what's A, which is the total factor productivity, by sort of assuming it grows at this linear rate of like, or this exponential rate of G, right? G is this rate of growth. And then to account for specific sector-based productivity, like improvements and like accounting for sector-based productivity gains, we sort of have the sigma function of like sector productivity using a sector specific productivity parameter, right? And this will help adjust for how different parts of the economy will change. So like creative parts may be less affected by AI compared to sort of more menial tasks, right? To understand the sector breakdown, I'm going to be looking at sort of an ONET database of like sort of 967 like occupational categories, and then sort of use some data sources like MGI to sort of give us information about how automatable these different industries are, right? And this gives us my final model, which I sort of developed, and it predicts the output of the UK economy essentially. So I want to. So a lot of these coefficients are difficult to sort of find out, right? Like these sector-based productivity and T and all these kind of sort of values. And so I just wanted to give a glimpse as how this function would work once if I have narrowed down and identified the correct coefficients. So I'm going to it's just running a quick Python script to just show what I sort of expect to sort of see. Basically, my pitch is sort of what I would do the finding is main thing is getting the data. So thinking about the sector-based productivity, looking at, I can do primary research into sort of what we need to develop and what industries will be the most automatable essentially. And so the main thing is data. I need lots of data, right? And of course, my model that I've developed itself has its own inherent weaknesses, right? It assumes a lot of things and sort of all economic models come with a sort of uncertainty about them, right? And so I think though, however, it generally fits into these three categories. So it has a big scope to affect the world, obviously. And I think it's incredibly neglected in the form of there's very few AI papers. Like I think I read about 10 really about which have sort of quantitative models for what on the economy. And the only issue you could sort of give is it's not entirely tangibly solvable, right? And that's the sort of main issue with the sort of project. But I think the other two factors are so immense that it's definitely worth researching. And so I thank you for listening to my project. And I think I rushed a bit towards the end. So if anyone has any other questions, they can reach out separately. But yeah, thank you for listening.